The agenda that I want to go on today, just to sort of give you an overview, these are the things that I had planned to go through, just kind of an introduction, and then looking at the steps in the process of whether you're at the very beginning or you're toward the end, and then what I call Dissertation 101, which is a research guide that I'll show you, but it has tools in it and shows you how you can search for data for dissertations as you might be using the dissertation database or finding them in some other type way, because not every dissertation is in the database. And then database searching will just tell you sort of an overview, and probably you're familiar with database searching, so I hadn't planned to go into a lot of detail with that. And then some about internet searching, because especially if you're going to be using like government sites, certainly if you're doing a dissertation in something to do with education in Texas, you might find relevant information or data or statistics on the TEA website. But there's a lot that can be found just through doing directed internet searching. I mean, you have to be sort of mindful about that you're casting a net over a very wide range of things that you might pull in. So you need to be very discerning when you do that. And then what I call the ethical use of research, which has to do with plagiarism, but also a few other things as well. And then finally, there's just some miscellaneous tips that I'm only going to mention. And if you want to know any more about them, I can go into detail. We have 6 doctoral programs that you might be enrolled in, as well as over 40 master's programs in 5 colleges. And this is where I'm going to try to figure out how to do the poll. And I think you can see the poll. And if you're in one of the doctoral programs, just select that. If you're a master's student, or if you're an undergraduate student, there might be some undergraduates here. And if you're, I don't know, if you're faculty, you can either pick what you want or however you want to do. It looks like it's working, and I'll just let it run for a minute just in case. But like I said, you don't have to answer. I thought it would just give me an idea, because I didn't have on the, I didn't know from the beginning what you all were in.
Scott.
Yes.
It only lets you submit it if you answer both questions.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess.
Or at least that's the problem that I had. I don't know if anybody else had that problem.
Yes, correct. They should select both and then they can submit it.
I meant it to be 2 separate polls. I guess.
I thought, okay.
I'll know next time not to do that. But, well, then I won't I'll just have sort of a general idea. It looks like a lot of you are in education and a few in English. Nobody, and 1 in business. Nobody that I can see is in counseling or educational psychology. I'll do the end polling now, and I'm sharing the results. I don't know how you see them, but just for your own interest, that sort of helps me. I know that it's education, 1 business, and then some English. So I thought I would start just to impress on you the importance of the dissertation or thesis. Back in 2017, I did a study when I saw that ProQuest dissertation and theses was telling when a document was cited in another document that was within ProQuest, and I saw that a lot of our dissertations and theses were being cited. And I never really, when I started in graduate school a long time ago, I don't think it really wasn't, I didn't really know of anybody using dissertations that much, but they were a lot harder to get to. You had to, get a physical copy from a library to use it. But I looked and saw that of the 451, and this was in 2017, 451 theses and dissertations out of a total, out of all the ones that were from A&M Commerce, as well as when it was known as East Texas State University, were cited. 451 had been cited by somebody. Most of them, as you can see from the chart, was in somebody else's dissertation or thesis. But then there were actually a few that were in books, and there were some that were in 177 that were in peer-reviewed journals. So I just thought that would help you to realize how important that the dissertation or thesis is, especially today when it is widely available, both in the ProQuest database as well as in the repository. You will find it'll be listed in Google Scholar. People will have immediate access to the full text document. And so it reflects you as well as the university. And I've seen the university become much more vigilant in making sure that the dissertations and theses are well crafted, because it is so much more widely disseminated than it was when we just had a hard copy of it in the in the library, and maybe had a microfilm copy we could share. And these are actually the top 3 cited dissertations. The first one, really interesting, it's been servant leadership and job satisfaction. And as far as I know, this person that wrote this has not published anything else. And, it wasn't, he's, I think, a superintendent or maybe a principal somewhere down around Tyler. And he wrote something that was apparently very popular, and 72 people were citing it in a ProQuest database. And I found that it had 124 cited in Google Scholar. So this person has had an impact far beyond what he anticipated, because he hasn't really published anything else. And then there were 2 more that had 25 each in ProQuest. So that's just to show you how widely that they can go. I like to sort of, for people to be aware that a lot is riding on making this the best you can. So the steps in the process where you might be, and I think maybe I have another poll on that. No, I guess I have to stop sharing that. This poll is just one, so you shouldn't have any problem doing that. I just wanted to know kind of where you all were. And I kind of, the last 2, I just, have where I know that you can be, there's more than one place to be in the beginning, and there's more than one place to be in the end, but just whether you figure yourself at the beginning or toward the end. And if you're just starting classes, I think it's really good to start out being aware of the things before you get to the point of writing a dissertation or thesis, because it will really help you. And I'll just wait a few more. Okay. Now I will share that. And so 4 have just started. 5 are deciding on a topic. 6 working on a proposal. And 2 beginning work, and 3 finishing work on the dissertation. So you're all at sort of different stages of the process. So has the poll gone away? I don't know it. I don't want it to be like distracting you or something. So in the big, the beginning thing is to develop a topic and to decide what you want to write about. And I think it's important to choose something. I mean, there's a number of factors that would go into it. What you're interested in, what you think will be the best suited for whatever your career goals are, what kind of data or scholarship or information you have access to, especially if you're doing some type of a study or a survey, what population you would have access to, as well as what advisor that you would find yourself sort of syncing with and wanting to work with. And so you want to pick something that person knows about and is interested in. And after you've developed a topic, then you conduct an exhaustive search of the existing literature for relevant peer-reviewed scholarship. And this is very broad. You try to look at everything, and not necessarily things you will end up using, but you may be using some things that are in reference works, what we'll call tertiary sources later, where it's maybe even like an encyclopedia of some type, where you're just getting a grounding in the idea. And then you choose the sources that you want to use that sort of focus down on what you are going to make your argument out of. And then you review and synthesize that. You put that together. And that's a big part. That's all the writing part of it. And you will have different ways of doing that. I started in the first doctoral program I was in was before computers. We had computers for word processing, but not research or anything. And it was still a lot print-based. And I sat on the ground, on the floor with all my notes around me and cards and everything. And I moved it around kind of like I was doing a puzzle. But I think people that have been in the digital, they have sort of grown up in the digital world would probably find it easier to do something like that in a digital sense. But regardless, I think you need to find your own way of, your most comfortable way of working through that. And then after you've written and synthesized the information, you need to properly cite your sources. And the library particularly can help you with that. And we'll talk about authenticate. I think everybody has to have their documents or their thesis or dissertation put through authenticate. And some people are putting their comprehensive exams through it as well. And I think advisors are supposed to know how to do that, but I have also had people that have been referred to me, and I'm able to give you an authenticate report. And it's particularly helpful with me because I don't know about, how much of originality is acceptable or not, but I can tell from it when you've cited something properly and when you have made, when something should be in quotation marks that isn't, because it will be very clear. And I've got a couple of examples I'll show you. And then at the very end, you're doing, you're revising and completing the whole process. And all along this too, there's, you'll find the timeline that the graduate school puts out where you're not just writing and revising, but you're sending all these documents to your advisor as well as eventually to the other people on your committee. I wanted to briefly just talk about the scholarly communication cycle because that's something that you're entering into. And that was a big realization for me where I had spent several years being sort of the consumer of scholarship about my chosen area of study. And then I suddenly find now I'm moving into I'm producing it. And if you know anything about the Burkean parlor metaphor that they've used in the beginning English classes here, which looks at scholarly communication as an ongoing conversation. And you've entered the room and you've heard what people are talking about. And now you're getting to the point where you're talking and you're sharing your ideas about your field. And so this, I think that it's important to understand as you enter that step. And also, you probably understand about the peer review process, because the gold standard or this type of scholarship that you will be directed to will be peer-reviewed articles that are in peer-reviewed journals. And, this means sort of just basically that it's been reviewed and honed and made better with the input from other experts in the field as it's been written by some expert in the field. So you've got more than just the writer who is behind it. There are 4 main types of information sources that you would be, and I'm not really looking at internet sources here, web sources here, but you've got news sources, magazines, scholarly journals, and academic books. And by and large, I would imagine that you are focused on scholarly journals and academic books. But, depending on your topic, if it's something to do with Texas education law or something, you might find, newspapers might have, to some degree, might have something relevant to your search. And there are different editorial reviews that are going through that these documents go through. Basically newspapers, very brief editing, and the most extensive editing is with academic books and scholarly journals. And there's also kind of the periodical continuum where you've got popular on one side and scholarly on the other. In the middle, you've got trade or professional publications that sort of bridge there are 4 people who are working in a field or in an area, and so might have some research in them, but they're basically practical things. I've seen those mostly like in nursing, but then there are a lot of education journals that are professional publications that are telling how to do something, how to manage a class, or how to be a principal or a school administrator. And then you've got primary literature, secondary literature, and tertiary literature. And this particular graphic is, I think, mostly aimed at sciences, although I think education could be in that as well. But the primary literature is original research. The secondary literature summarizes what was in the primary literature, and the tertiary literature are basically like reference works that direct people to the secondary literature. Tertiary literature could be textbooks, dictionaries, encyclopedias, or handbooks. The secondary literature will be literature review articles where somebody they're not doing a study, but they're doing a study of a bunch of studies, and you've probably seen those before. And you would probably want to track down any interesting study that was mentioned in those review articles. You'd want to track those down because those are the ones where somebody has created the primary literature and actually done some type of study of some type. And then as far as the humanities or with literature, primary sources would be like documents or artifacts, letters, diaries, maps, or if you're working with a particular text, like Hamlet or something, it would be the text itself. And secondary sources then would be books or articles or reports that are based on those primary sources. And then kind of similar to the last one, the tertiary sources are going to be textbooks or encyclopedias, or that take together the information and sort of popularize it for the general audience, as well as even popular magazines can be looked at that as well. And, the English people might find this more useful, but in some cases, it's how you use a document. The document itself or the information source may not innately be a primary source or a secondary source, but it's your purpose for it. So in this case, this essay that T.S. Eliot wrote, Hamlet and His Problems, if you were doing research on T.S. Eliot, it would be a primary source because it's his writing, it's his thoughts. But if you're doing research on Hamlet or William Shakespeare, this is a secondary source. So I don't know how involved y'all will be with primary or secondary, but that's a good way to look at it. I'm going to send you this presentation, and the URL for this research guide is embedded here, so you should be able to click on it. But it's a research guide that I wrote about how to find dissertations, because that's going to be the important first part of, or one of the first parts of your research after you've chosen a topic, or maybe as you're in the process of trying to narrow down a topic, find other dissertations that are written about your topic. And this research guide will tell you how to use ProQuest Dissertations and Theses database, as well as other ways of finding, because not all dissertations or theses are going to be in there. You can use Google Scholar or other, places that I have links there to some other, mostly international sources for dissertations. And then the last one, surveys and other instruments. I've been contacted several times by people who are looking for a particular survey, or they have an idea for the kind of survey they want. And I found it very profitable to use the dissertation database and search, if they know the name of a specific instrument, to go in searching with that name, and then any results that come up looking in the at the end at the appendix, because nearly all the time, if somebody has used a survey instrument for their dissertation, they're going to have reproduced it in the appendix. And there still may be, you have to contact somebody in order to get permission to use it. A few times we've found that it said, there was enough information in that appendix that it said it's like free to use. Anybody, the author has released it for anyone to use. I would suggest sort of verifying that, but you can really get a lot of information about survey instruments if you look in the appendix of dissertations that have used them. And the first thing here, the essential links, these are links to the various things that the graduate school here has made available. And you can find those on their page, but they asked me to link them on this page as well. In the ProQuest Dissertations and Theses global database, you can search by a number of different facets. So you don't have to just put in a keyword. You can put in an index term or a subject heading, but you have to know the specific ones. Or you can search by author, title, date, advisor. You can search, like if you've got an advisor that you're going to work with, you can look up in, assuming that advisor has worked with other people before on a dissertation or thesis, you can find past work that they've helped a student with, or a department, the university name, or degree. And there's also a feature in there where you can look up the terms if you don't know. Some of the terms have kind of a thesaurus-like interface, so you can look them up if you want to. You can sort your results by relevance or date. And you can also, if it's necessary, you can have it include spelling variants. two things to remember about ProQuest database. Some things may be embargoed for one reason or another. And in fact, you can embargo I don't know exactly what the rules are that are the guidelines that we have, but I know that some people have embargoed their thesis or dissertation, which will mean it is not accessible for a certain amount of time. Dissertations and theses have historically been expected to be available to the public, especially if they're produced at a state-sponsored institution, because state money has contributed to the work, and so in the same way that research that is funded by grants that are from the government have to be available to the public. It's just expected that theses and dissertations will be available. However, you might find that one has been embargoed for one reason or another. Usually it's, like the person thinks that they're going to publish it. And I think that generally what I've heard is that they will give them 5 years. And, in that 5-year period, they can try to get it published. After that, it would go in, it would be available in the database. Or sometimes I know of one here where it had extensive interviews in it from someone from another country. And I guess it was very sensitive information, and they thought it was better to be private just for I don't know, political reasons or something. So so you won't always find that it's going to be something in full text, although by and large, it will be in full text. The thing that would probably happen more frequently is that you will get this missing docs suspend error. And the database, I guess people can make up bots or something that just go in and download it, hundreds of thousands of documents in a database, and they harvest all that and then do whatever with it, sell it or distribute it some way in a way that the database doesn't really want to happen. So they put a throttle on it, kind of like what I've had sometimes with my cell phone, where if I use it too much to stream, I get blocked. And so I know, and I've been contacted by some people who are just downloading one dissertation after another because they're, in all this research. And you can do that. You just can't do it quickly because there's a 200 megabyte limit to how much can be down. Only 200 megabytes can be downloaded within a 15-minute time period. And if you exceed that, you get that error message, and it will last for 30 minutes that you're blocked. And then you just have to wait, and then it will unblock. I've downloaded hundreds of dissertations and theses, so it can be done, but you just can't sit there and do it, as fast as you can. If any of you want to look in a particular database at the end, we can look at that. I just wanted to make you aware that the databases all have advanced searching. And the way they're set up now, they all default to the basic search because that's something that's less confusing to freshmen and beginning researchers. But I suggest to any of you all that you immediately go to the advanced search, and you can use Boolean operators, and you can also use specific facets to make your search very focused. And one way to help with the strategy for doing searching is to sort of understand the parts of a research article. If somebody is looking for something that has that's been a study where they've used a particular approach to gather or to look at data that they've gathered, I frequently will tell them to include the word methodology in their search, because somewhere in the article there's going to be a section called methodology, or they're going to have a sentence where they've said, this is our methodology. But when you're doing your research in the beginning and gathering things, you're not going to have time to read every single article that you gather. So as much as you can know about how a research article is typically structured, the better you can browse through them very quickly. You understand at the very beginning, there's the abstract. That's the most important thing to give you a basic idea of what it's about. You might want to, look and see the methodology section to see if it is treating the data in a way that is of interest to you. The literature review is very useful with an article that you've identified as relevant, because then you want to look at the literature review, and those were probably going to be other relevant articles that you'll want to narrow down. And then finally, the conclusion part might be a really useful place to look at, because you'll get an idea about what their outcome was and maybe what sort of focus they project for the future involving that research. The main Boolean operators that we would use is or, and not. And you can see I've got 3 single terms in one 2-word phrase that I've joined together using or, and not. And I'm actually then, out of this potentially very big set of articles that could be have one or more of these terms, I'm only focusing on a very small portion of the things. And so though as much as you can understand about putting the Boolean operators in place will make your searching more time effective. And then keyword versus subject term searching. Keyword searching is easy because it's natural language, but it also potentially brings up way too many results. And so but the subject term is going to bring you very specific results. However, you have to know what the specific subject terms are that database is using, because if you don't use that exact term and if you don't spell it right, it's not going to pull up the results that you want. So I usually start out with the keyword search, and then after I've got some results, I move to a subject term. And this is just an example of some subject headings from CINAHL, which is a nursing database, and from Medline, a medical database. And you can see like the common word is heart attack, which will get you results in either of these databases, but you're going to get much more specific results if you use the subject heading myocardial infarction. And you'll see that even for distance education, they've got specific type, it's called a controlled vocabulary, where it has to be in that, written, it has to be that way, even with that punctuation. So subject headings are good for getting very specific results, but you've got to know the exact ones. You can also use, and I might show you this at the end, OneSearch. You probably are familiar with that. That's our federated search that's on the library homepage. I don't really recommend that for doing the advanced research because it pulls in everything, and but it is useful as a tool for. And one of the things I do, like in this, I did a search today on Guy Fawkes because I don't know if y'all know, today is Guy Fawkes Day, November 5th, and so I found a lot of results but I didn't really know. I mean, could they be in history databases? Could they be in, I don't know really what they would be in. And so in my result page, I clicked on, in the left is where you narrow things down. I click on collection, and actually these are databases. So this helps me see what databases have articles about Guy Fawkes. And then I would probably go to those specific databases. But especially if you've got a field or a topic that potentially covers more than one academic subject area, it may be in something you're not thinking of. So this is a good way to identify databases that would be useful to you. And then briefly, I wanted to talk about the citation management. And this is what is really good for y'all that are at the beginning, because I think it's very useful to use the technological tools that we have to manage your research. But if you're at the end of your research and you're writing your dissertation, I think sometimes it would be more trouble than it's worth to take all your citations and retrofit them into RefWorks or EndNoteWeb or some other thing. So if you start from the beginning, putting things in one of these managers and creating folders where they're, even as you go through classes, you might have a class for each, or a folder for each class. And then eventually you've got, where it's a folder for each topic of interest. And this is and these are all, you will find these in the library databases. This is an example of my page in RefWorks. You can create folders over here. You pull in articles, but then you put them in folders, and it will actually then format them in whatever citation style that you're using. I'm assuming it would be APA or MLA, which generally I say they're like 95% correct, but there will frequently be, or occasionally be, problems. And most of the time, those problems have to do with capitalization. So you need to double check anything that you format in one of these management tools. The other one is EndNoteWeb, which I'm a lot more familiar with. I've used that a lot. You can see I've got a whole lot of different groups here. I've got 206 total references, and then they're all divided up into different groups. And then the last one is most of the databases will allow you to create a profile within the database, and you can save your research there. Before we had RefWorks and before we had EndNoteWeb, we had these EBSCOhost folders and like Academic Search Complete and Education Complete. And I found those to be, I really liked those. And so all of the kind of literary research that I did, I put all of that stuff into these EBSCO folders, and it really helped me keep track of it. And this, I think you can have the citations emailed to you, but it doesn't really create a list of references like you would have at the end of your thesis or dissertation, like those other two would. But it will maintain, the links to the articles, and you can arrange them how you like, and you can share these folders with other people. And then moving to Google, you know that Google has an advanced search, and if you go to just the regular google.com, click on advanced, and you will be able to incorporate the same Boolean terms that we use in the databases. One of the things I find really useful is the search within a site or domain. And you can say this has .edu, and you might also put .gov if you want government sites. And not everything that's on a .edu site is, I mean, don't take it as, gospel, or like, certainly don't take it the same as peer reviewed, because you've still got people out there at universities that are, that have their own websites and they're putting up whatever, all kinds of things. But it's a little bit better than just something that is coming off of a .com site, because you at least know that the person is some way associated with the university. Google Scholar is a really valuable way to find research. As we move more and more into open access publishing, and things are not necessarily going to be in a paid database, they will be found in Google Scholar. And in fact, this is a friend of mine, and her dissertation, which is the first item on the list, because that university in New Zealand does not contribute their things to ProQuest, you wouldn't be able to locate her dissertation unless you used Google Scholar. And you could search either by her name or by the topic if that was something that was of interest to you. And some things in Google Scholar will be in paid databases, and there's a way that you can have that connected to the library, so you can search in Google Scholar and pull up full text of paid material, as long as you let it know that you have to sort of authenticate that you are from a university that pays for those resources, and somebody in the library can help you figure out how to do that. And then Google Books is useful for a number of reasons. First of all, there often will be a preview. I had one project where I was just interested in looking at the first chapter of a lot of different books, because I was researching critical editions of literary texts, and I just wanted to know the methodology that they were using, behind what they were doing. So I really didn't care about the majority of the book. I just wanted the beginning part where they were explaining. And I found a lot of the material in Google Books, because frequently they will have a preview that will be the first few chapters. So in a lot of cases, I didn't even have to get the book through interlibrary loan. I got it through Google Books. And also I found that this was useful as a sort of bibliography, especially if you are researching something that has a unique name. And in this case, I was researching, well, that last one, that's my dissertation, but Alarm for London was the text I was looking at. It's an unusual spelling of the word alarm. And so I was able to find, like here on page 94 in this book, this person is discussing this text. And I even found some cases where there were journals that were indexed in Google Books. And I was getting citations that were relevant to my research that weren't showing up in the databases. So Google Books is a useful source, in some instances. And then there's another research guide, Copyright 101. And I think it's important for you to understand copyright for two reasons. One, because you are using scholarship and you want to do it ethically. You want to understand about fair use and public domain, but also you're becoming a producer of scholarship. So you want to understand what your rights are as far as your own copyright over your own work that you're creating. And the link to this is embedded in here. I don't think I'm going to read through these, but you can see them in the slides when I send it out if you're interested. But Princeton had this thing that was showing examples of plagiarism, and they took this paragraph from this book called The Playwright as Magician. And they showed 3 different instances of plagiarism. This first one, I think everybody can, sort of see it's very egregious. They've taken everything that I've highlighted here and reproduced it in their text, and they haven't attributed it at all to, to this writer that wrote that book. There's a way you can do that and do it properly, is if you introduce the thing by telling who wrote it, Alvin B. Kernan, and also telling the page numbers. The second example is less egregious. It just takes little passages or kind of extended short passages from the thing and uses it. And that's still, this is where I think some people, especially when I look at the reports in Authenticate, that it will identify something like this, that somebody didn't immediately understand that they were plagiarizing, but Authenticate will make that very evident to you. And, you can, even these short passages, especially ones that are unique phrases, like, instead of saying Hamlet pretends to be insane, they're saying pretense of madness. So if it's a unique phrase, it needs to be in quotation marks. And then finally, the last one is just where they haven't taken anything word for word, but it's the idea, the specific idea that is in that passage, and they're not citing it. And that, that can be done properly. This is the same passage that was written, but I inserted in here as observed by Alvin B. Kernan, and then I put the page numbers at the end. So you can look over that when just if you want more extended examples of plagiarism. And then this next couple of things is from, I did a analysis of 100 dissertations that were written a few years ago here. And these are just some examples of some problematic citations that I would hope to steer you away from. Don't use like about.com. I wouldn't use Wikipedia as a final source. You can certainly use it for brainstorming or getting an idea about something. And now, they will have citations at the end of Wikipedia, but don't use Wikipedia as your source for defining Beck's anxiety inventory. We've got things in the library that we can point you to that will find that. And I think this was an example just to understand bias, understand that anything that you use could be potentially biased. And that doesn't mean don't use it. That doesn't mean it's wrong or that it's bad. It's just to understand that writers will frequently have an agenda or a point of view that that they're trying to promote. And this is just the headline on a story that I saw earlier this year that was talking about the exact same thing, Queen Elizabeth. I picked something that was about British politics because I thought it would be less volatile to us to look at. But she gave a speech basically telling everybody stay home and don't get sick. And you can see The Guardian, which is kind of a left-leaning paper, Queen praises the people, if not the government, and pulls off a tough gig. And it says she delivered the clear moral leadership that many politicians have failed to provide. So you can see very clearly they've inserted their point of view in here that really doesn't have anything to do with the article. And so even peer-reviewed articles could have some type of bias from time to time. And if it goes over the line that retracted, this is an example of a retracted article. And as far as I can tell, there wasn't really anything about the content of the article that was found inappropriate. It was the affiliations of one of the writers. And I don't know which one of these, one or more of these organizations that one of the writers is affiliated with is like on the bad list of people that are in that field of study. So that's why they retracted the article, because they discovered that they were associated with some organization that they feel has a lot of problems. So as part of the ethical use of scholarship, I think it's important to understand the bias, to understand even when something's been retracted like this, it puts it in a different place as far as using it in your writing. You can still use it, but I think you just need to understand that it's, gonna have a bad connotation to some people. And then finally, this was, you need to use sources appropriately. These are two citations that I saw. They were from two different dissertations. The first one, I don't know what the article said, but I do know that Cordell and Cordell, which was the people behind that article, are a real like fathers' rights group. If you hear them on the radio, they're saying, men, don't let your wives take you to the cleaners. We'll get your money. We'll get your kids, and you won't have to pay her any money. And so, it's fine, but just understand that is from an institution that has a specific point of view about things. And then this other one, I don't know why, it was really weird that this person that wrote a dissertation about gender stereotypes among women that she'd studied somewhere in rural Tennessee, used this website from talkitover.in as a place to get a definition of gender stereotypes. And that's an Indian counseling business. And this is a picture from their website. The counselors wearing, so it just was very culturally inappropriate. I thought to not to mention that we have material in the library that could have been used much better to pull a definition of gender stereotype. So don't just like Google something and find a definition for it and use it without thinking. And then this is toward the end. I just wanted, because I've had a lot of people, bringing their theses or dissertations to me to run through Authenticate. And then sometimes they're very shocked to find that there's a lot that they need to work on. And there's sort of two areas that I see with Authenticate. The graduate school is interested in having a certain low percentage of non-original writing in your thesis or dissertation. And what that percentage is might vary. I've heard it's around 12%, but I think it could vary depending on whatever your topic is. But that means that 12% is going to be properly cited. And that's where I feel like I can step in when I see something that isn't properly cited. And I can say, you need to put that in quotation marks, or you need to put that in your own words. You need to tell where you got this idea from, because this whole passage is verbatim from somebody else. And this is what the report looks like when I'm looking at it on my web interface. And you see they've got an originality report of 16%, and it will highlight areas that it's found somewhere else, and it will show where it came from. And you can actually click on that box and it will take you to the original source, and you run through all, there's many of these, you can go through the whole document. However, I have to turn all of that into a PDF document and give to the person. And this is what the document looks like that I give them. It will have highlights all through the report. along with color-coded numbers, and then you have to go to the end of the report to say where these things are coming from. And of course, this one at 47%, way over the line. Something needs to be done with that. And this is just a close-up of, you'll see, well, this was one where I had to help work with this person because I said, I mean, they're over the line of what the graduate school wants at 35%, but also you can see this, even though they've got citations here, there's these huge sections that are being highlighted because it's coming word for word from somewhere else. And, you know, people that find this after they've done a draft that they think is close to the end, find then that they've got a lot of work that they've got to do because all of that's got to be fixed. And, you know, so there's two sides. There's the originality that the graduate school is interested in, and then there's just the citing it properly that I can help with.
Scott,
and then I was
there are
told
some questions for
yes.
the authenticate. So do you want me to read for you or?
Yes.
So just hold on. Mary asked, what is the 0% that you're looking for on authenticate?
What is the what?
What is the what is the percentage?
Well, I mean, I've heard just that the graduate school wants around 12%, but that is assuming that that 12% is properly cited. But I think, I mean, you would have to ask the advisor or the graduate school because, and then I don't know, like this first one that is, I think it's a thesis in math. I don't even know how they, you know, figure out about, because there's a lot of, you know, where it'll show up similarity with an equation, you know, and it will run the percentage way up. But then, you know, I mean, like the equation, how many, you know, you can't paraphrase or put in your own, into your own words, you know, a long equation. So it would depend on the field, I think, as well as the advisor. And also, I mean, something could be a very high percentage and be properly cited. And even if the graduate school accepted it, it might be a violation of copyright because there's only so much that you can reproduce of a work, you know, and you know, there's no exact percentage for that. It's all kind of calculated individually under the terms as we understand them of fair use. But the only thing I can say is anecdotally, I've heard 12%, but I think it varies, and I think probably an individual could make an argument for having it be a little bit higher if, you know, depending on what their topic was and what their reasoning was. I'm sure if I put my dissertation through Authenticate, it would probably show a huge non-originality. But I was dealing with most of everything I was dealing with where it was in the public domain. So I wasn't violating any copyright by it. I don't know if that answered, but there really isn't a specific percentage other than my hearing that it's around 12%. Was that all?
Yes, Scott, thank you.
Okay, well, finally, I think one of the last things is, because I was told you're interested in, or you might be interested in interlibrary loan, and I don't know how much people know about interlibrary loan. But when you go to the library homepage, on the left, if you click on services, you'll see a link to, and this is just a little screen capture, so I didn't have to flip back and forth, but you'll see a link to interlibrary loan. And when you click on that, you're taken to this page in the middle. And then you again have to, I don't know why they make it sort of a two-step process, but you have to again, I think because they want you to read this disclaimer that says you're not going to violate copyright or do anything. You're going to use anything you get through interlibrary loan is going to be used appropriately. So then you have to click on this interlibrary loan link. And then you get taken to this login page. And it's not the login like you use in MyLeo. It's not an account that you automatically have. If you don't already have one, you have to click on create an account and go through the process of giving it your name and your email address and your campus ID. Even faculty have to use the campus ID. And then you just make up some password. It doesn't have to be your MyLeo password. And after you've done that, then you sign in. And then you're taken to this page. And it defaults to article, but if you want to book, you click on book. And the fields that have an asterisk on them have got to have something in them, or when you click submit, it will tell you didn't do it all. So you need to put something in those. But even the ones without asterisks, if you've got the information, the more you have, the better to put it in, because then it's easier to find. If it's an article, then it can come very quickly, even if it's coming from another continent, because I would imagine almost 100% of the articles now are done electronically. I don't think anybody anymore would Xerox one and send it through the mail. So if you want an article, it's going to be delivered to the library electronically, and it's going to be passed on to you electronically. So you fill in the information, submit it, and then hopefully within 2 or 3 days, you'll get an email that says it's here, and you will download the article. You need to make sure you save the article if you do that, because you're actually only able to view the article 5 times in this ILL system, and then you don't have access to it anymore. So once you open it the first time, make sure you save it. And then if you want to book, click to book. Of course, you can imagine with the pandemic, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit freer now, but some libraries were not sharing their print collection, because then they're having to sanitize it and stuff when it comes back. It's much better if you can identify a chapter from a book that you want, because then it will more likely be scanned and sent to you electronically. But they can't scan an entire book, but they can scan one chapter from a book. So, and we can help you. If you need help to identify what chapter it is in this book you want, somebody in the library can help you figure that out. I am not going to really talk a lot about SAGE research methods, because we've had somebody for the last couple of weeks from SAGE that's been doing webinars on using SAGE research methods. We got this last year, or maybe it's been a little over a year that we've had it. The graduate school was ecstatic that we got it. It's very useful. There's a lot about it that I haven't learned yet, but it has videos in it, as well as a lot of useful tools that will help you to do your research. And if you're interested in these, you can contact us. And I know there's been at least 2 online webinars that were done, and I think they've been recorded. So those links could be sent on to you. I think one was about literature review, and the other one was just about basic research. And the last thing I want to mention is just these miscellaneous things. And I thought about going into a little more detail, but these are just things that I found useful. The pie chart that I showed earlier that was showing about where the dissertations had been cited, I created that with this website here on nces.ed.gov. And you can make bar graphs with that. I know you can do it in Excel, but I just found this website a lot easier to use. And I use that all the time for poster things that I've done at conferences. And I use it for a lot of different things. And then GIMP is a free download. If any, I dealt with a lot of images in my dissertation, as well as just putting together something like this. And GIMP is a free download. It's like Photoshop. It's really, I mean, it's every bit as powerful as Photoshop, but it's free. And Jing is another free download that is a screen capturing tool. And I use that a lot with creating graphics. Grammarly is something that I got because my doctorate's in English. I had a lot of people that were approaching me asking about looking at their papers or something. And I didn't have time to read through all of them. Or I mainly wanted to focus on the content rather than the grammar. And Grammarly has a free version, which you can use, but it has a paid version that costs about $40 a year that I found really useful because it will show me when subject and verb are not in agreement, or when a 2 is used where it should have been a 4, or, I mean, it's much more detailed. And when I'm just looking very quickly through a document for somebody, I found that really useful just to identify major problems. It was very useful when I taught freshman English when we had a lot of undergraduates from South Korea, because they had a lot of problems with knowing what prepositions to use. And then finally, browsing, which is on the library homepage. You can use that to just browse through current or past issues of academic journals as well as popular magazines.